in the same community, right? So,
Yes.
yeah. So,
It's also your
yeah,
first HomeNE with us, Dennis. Welcome, welcome.
Yeah. I'm always learning.
that's what I've decided to tell my granddaughter as she graduates this year. Always be learning. She doesn't particularly enjoy education, but she's graduating, and I want her to know she shouldn't stop there. So, well, as we wait for others to be joining us, we will start promptly at 2 o'clock today. I'll give you the question of the day as we're waiting, and you'll see it here shortly on the opening slide. But if you could choose any famous person to be a Zoom co-host with you, who would you choose? So I'll let you kind of ponder that and maybe give us your answer in a little bit. But I first asked that question about 4 years ago, and it was hilarious. Some of the responses we got, Zoom was still, we were coming out of COVID, and Zoom was a novelty those first few months. And that might be a good question to revisit.
I think somebody who wants to do the technical side. That's who I want to co-host with. So I
Sherry
don't
does yes, Sherry does our technical side, because if it goes wrong, turning it off and on is all my expertise. So she does all the back end stuff for us. So, but yeah, who would you choose to be a Zoom co-host with you? Oh, okay. Carrie's going to ask Ben and Aaron. Is it Napier? I've seen their show a little bit. They're on HGTV, and they go around repairing and rehabbing and renovating homes in their community. Is it Georgia? I want to say somewhere down south, perhaps.
Yes.
Laurel
Laurel.
somewhere. I can't.
Yes. South Carolina, maybe.
I think it's
Yeah.
Mississippi. Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Okay.
Yes, I think you're right. I think it's
Okay.
Mississippi.
Well, that was my second guess. I just knew that it was somewhere in the southeast. So, but yeah, that would be fun. I know Mike Rowe has been showing up in my Facebook feed a lot. He's with Rowe. He has a foundation and gives scholarships to students going into the technical trades. And he has, I don't know if it's still going, the show or the program Dirty Jobs. And he goes around for a day working with different trades. And some of them are pretty nasty, like septic related and crawling under houses and working with,
Dirty Jobs or something.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think he would definitely be on board with HomeNE and what we're trying to do, and the challenge of recruiting our youth back to our communities, especially in the trades. So he would be somebody I think would be funny and enjoyable as a co-host. So that name came to mind for me. So anybody got something else?
Hey, we should say welcome today to YouTube watchers. We have 3 already today.
Oh,
Most people
nice.
just watch here, but we sometimes will get some people on YouTube watching, so that's fun.
Okay. Val says Clint Harp, and I'm going to ask who that is. Somebody came to mind, but I don't want to appear
He,
clueless. So,
he was with Chip and Joanna Gaines,
Yeah.
okay.
and he does restorations around the country, and so yeah.
Okay.
And makes
He built,
beautiful furniture.
yes,
Yeah, he's good.
that's what came to mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He does amazing pieces. Joanna just sketches it out, and he does amazing work with her
Yeah.
ideas. So
Yeah.
Beverly's joining us from Bertrand. Good afternoon. So we're still about 3 or 4 minutes from starting. So for those of you just joining us, whether it's your first time or one of many times. Thanks for being here. We will start at 2 o'clock. But as we're warming up, who would you choose as a Zoom co-host, a famous person that you know of or know personally? And who would that be? You can enter your choice if you wish in the chat box, or we would love to have you open your microphone as well. Oh, okay. Beverly, I know that Sherry and I are famous, but thank you for that.
Nope, not doing the backside for you, Bev. Sorry.
You're famous to me.
You're very
We
kind,
wouldn't be
Bev.
we wouldn't be anywhere without you.
This is Sharon's brainchild.
I don't know what you're talking about because I just joined, but Sharon only has 2 brain cells operating, and most of the time they're fighting. So I don't think there's much that's my brainchild.
Well,
Was.
Beverly asked or said she would invite Sherry and I as the famous people to join her as Zoom co-hosts.
There you
So
go.
we were getting a chuckle out of that. So we are getting close to starting. We'll give just another minute or two as people join. I see the number continuing to go up. So we'll give them just a couple more minutes. Zoom makes it possible to slide into the room at start time. So we'll give a little bit more time. Did I hear
No, I
somebody?
said earlier that this was our 75th, but it's actually number 76 today. 75 was in November, and we missed out saying welcome.
Okay. So yeah, that's quite a number. We'll give one more minute and then we'll get started. So welcome to all of you who are joining. I can't see everybody, but thanks for taking time out of your day to be here. Okay, well, by my clock, it is 2 o'clock, and I know everybody has a busy afternoon, and I do want to honor our time with you. So, welcome to the January 2025 edition of the HomeNE Learning Network. That's almost hard to say, January of 2025, but it is here indeed. And thank you for joining us on this statewide learning network webinar series. My name is Lori Ferguson, and I'm with South Central Economic Development District as a community consultant, and we office in Holdridge, Nebraska, and cover a 13-county area. SCED, as we frequently refer to ourselves as, serves as the lead agent for HomeNE, which is designed for people from all across Nebraska, and we've even extended outside of our borders some. So we've noticed that new people continue to join us and register for our webinar series. So if you're new or haven't participated in a while, I just wanted to share with you again the purpose of HomeNE and let you know a little bit more about the Learning Network. It's designed for people from all across Nebraska and beyond who are seeking to successfully address their local housing challenges. And its purpose is to provide a setting that, one, provides you with face-to-face and online opportunities that will foster interaction, engagement, and skill building for those who are passionate about addressing their housing shortages in their communities. And it also is intended to empower and encourage the participants to apply what they learn through the different avenues that are made available to them. So welcome to all of you, and a special big welcome to our presenter today, Sarah Arnett from Wood River. Sarah wears many, many hats within the Wood River community, and just a little bit of history. On my 4th day of coming to work for SCID, I was sent to talk with Sarah. So she has the privilege, distinction, or history of being the first community member that I ever met with as a SCID staff person. And that was just a few years ago. So Sarah, a long time has passed and a lot of good things have happened in Wood River since then. So she's joining us today to share not only the latest project underway in the city of Wood River, an upper story living project, but also just the journey that the good people of Wood River took to get to the point where they are at. So this is a story that I really love, and I think it's very worth sharing and very appropriate for the first webinar of 2025. So before we begin, though, I'm going to ask Sarah to introduce herself and share just a little bit about some of those many hats that she wears within the community. Sarah?
Sure. Thanks, Lori, for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm here representing both the City of Wood River and Wood River Vision 2020 Inc., which is a nonprofit community development organization that we founded in about 2014. We incorporated. And everything that you're going to hear today is definitely a group achievement and lots of collaborations within the community organizations. So it's not just vision, we tip our hat to everybody that we've collaborated with to get to where we're at today. And professionally, I'm with Heritage Bank and Heritage Insurance. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, well, thanks for introducing yourself, Sarah, to our group. We'll let you get started.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I titled this program Onward and Upward because Wood River is developing some upper story rental housing for the first time. And so I'm going to share about that project, but then SCID also asked me to kind of go back through other housing and community development projects that Wood River has tackled since about 2012 is when we began our community development journey. Started with a town hall meeting that was facilitated by SCID, and they've been great partners all along the way. So if you aren't already working with your development district, I would strongly encourage you to reach out and begin that conversation. They are here to help. So anyhow, I'm happy to answer questions along the way or at the end. So you can put questions into the chat box, and SCID will monitor that. So with that, let's take a look at Wood River's upper story housing project. Okay, so preface, SCID nominated us in 2023 for the Governor's Showcase Award for Community Development. That was a great honor, and it was really kind of a capstone of a lot of big development projects that we had accomplished. So it really felt right that it came at that time, and we were honored to have Governor Pillen here with us that day. Okay, so in order to pursue this upper story housing, we worked with SCID and applied for the Nebraska Affordable Housing Trust Fund grant. And it is not just for upper story housing, but that's what we applied for. And that was our first time doing trust fund. It is very involved. So you need a partner at your economic development district to make heads or tails of all of that. And we appreciate Leanne and all she's done for us. Advance. Okay, so this picture on the left is the subject property. It's called the Dunn Building, and it's right in our downtown district. You can see it's more than a little tired looking. It's a 1910 building, structurally sound, but certainly underutilized. So the project that we are working on is the upper story. And we're going to be converting that into apartments. If you want to advance, Sherry. You can see that the building on the left, that is owned by the same developers. And it already has 4 upper story apartment units. They are not fancy, but they are definitely affordable housing in rural Nebraska. And they are always rented up. And so we knew that there was demand for more housing. And these folks that own these 2 buildings said, you know, the second story of our done building is basically a blank canvas. There was nothing up there. And so we started to dream, what if, which is where a lot of community development begins, is what if. So you can see here kind of what it looked like up there. Beautiful old tin ceilings, but spots of those were completely roached out from years of water damage. And you can see in the windows there that those are not the original windows. The original windows were much bigger. And so we will be going back to the original size and bringing a lot more light into that space. But you can see that there's very high ceilings in there. So it's going to make for, even though the units are small, they won't feel quite as small as they truly are. Go ahead. So on the bottom of your screen, picture that's the street out there, and you will enter from the street and go up a set of stairs, and then there will be 3 small apartments up there. 2 of them will be 1-bedroom apartments. That's the units 201 and 202. They're each about 665 square foot. And then on the right back is the studio apartment. It's a little bit smaller yet. And the developers worked with Good Life Architects out of Kearney, who have done quite a bit of their own upper story living in historic or older buildings. And so they really had a lot of expertise to share about how do you maximize the space with, you know, as little room as we had. Each unit will have its own laundry. The developers are going to go with the combined washer dryer units, which we think is pretty slick because, you know, your target is probably younger people or people who are working. They could throw a load of laundry in the morning before they leave. And when they get home at night, it'll be dry. So that's kind of a nice feature that you don't find in most rental units. And then they each have their own bath, kitchen, and an open concept living space. And in addition to the square footage difference, the only other real difference is in that studio. It doesn't necessarily have a door on the bedroom by virtue of being called a studio. So it's a little more open concept in that way too. The affordable housing trust fund rules say that given this square footage, the maximum number of heartbeats in a unit is 2. And so that will be, you know, who will be able to rent those units. Go ahead. In here, you can see kind of what that layout might look like for the tenant. And I will point out, you know, even though these are small units, Good Life had a good suggestion in the closets. They're going to build, since the ceilings are so high, they're going to build a platform up there where for additional storage. So people, if they had, you know, luggage or things that they didn't need to use all the time, it will at least give them some additional storage space. Okay. Why did we think that this was the right solution? Well, our community struggles with attracting teachers. We typically get beginning teachers, And we get young adults who we're thrilled to have come back to the community, but where are they going to live, right? We have an overall shortage of housing. Rarely is there anything on the market. And when a house does become available, it's not there long. So we thought that this would be beneficial both to our school district and our child care center and, just essential workforce to have these smaller, more affordable living units. So you can see there on the slide, when we applied in 2023, the rent rates were going to be $685 a month or $635 for the studio. Those units, when they become available later this year, we're able to adjust the rates with DED's approval if we feel that we need to do so. And then as far as income eligibility, because this is trust fund, for a 10-year period, the developer had to commit to leasing the units at those rates, but to persons with income as shown there. So two of the households, two of the units have to be rented to a household making at or below 120% of AMI, and then one household at 100% of AMI or below. And Leanne from SCED provided the current income limits for Hall County. So you can see, if it was a one-person household, how much they could earn and still be eligible to rent these nice new units very affordably. So, and to me, that's a pretty generous number. When you think about what does a starting teacher or a childcare worker or a service worker make, it's certainly well underneath those limits. So it's a great addition to our community. Go ahead. So as of the developer gave me these pictures, you can see they tore out the couple of interior walls that divided the space, and they've framed up the units. I know that the plumbers and the electricians have been there, and the developer said yesterday that the fire sprinkler system plumbing was going in. So that's an exciting development. And so that's something that you need to plan on if you're doing this kind of housing, is for life safety reasons, you need to have a fire sprinkler system. Go ahead. All right. So that's all fine and good, but the reality is renovating this space for upper story housing absolutely would not be possible if it weren't for the trust fund funding to come with it. So we were awarded $526,000 for the project, plus you get something for housing management and lead-based paint testing. And we paired that with $167,000 in private investment for a total cost for the project of $693,000, which is $231,000 per unit. And please don't do the math to divide that into the square footage, because it's just frightening. So, if I only gave you that $693,000 figure, it would be common. I would expect you to say, how in the world could it cost that much? So that's why the developer said, absolutely go ahead and share what the breakdown is, because we want to help other communities, anybody that might be thinking about doing this. This is how it all adds up. And this is not extravagant finishes. And we certainly are trying to value engineer, and we hope that some of these things can come in under, but that's not normally how construction goes. So it is expensive, but that's what the trust fund is there for. And we will end up with 3 housing units that will be very important for the long term in our community. So it's a bit of a labor of love for the developers. But it will be great. So yeah. Go ahead. All right. So that was what I was going to tell you about the upper story. Do you want to pause? Are there any questions about the upper story project?
Anybody have any questions for Sarah?
Sarah, you might have mentioned this. Sorry if I missed it. What kind of heating and cooling systems do the apartments have?
Yes. I think they're gas heat furnaces. And there's air conditioning and everything in there. Is that what you were wondering, Dina?
Yeah.
Okay. There are no questions in the chat box, Sarah. So if somebody has something, please ask. Otherwise, we'll continue.
Okay, very good. So, so other housing projects. I know this is on a lot of communities' minds is the Rural Workforce Housing Fund. And Wood River applied and was awarded in 2024. We gathered up $134,700 in local match from our local economic development corporations. And that then got us a $534,000 grant. And that is run through Wood River Vision 2020 because municipalities weren't eligible to be the applicant. And so 2024, once we were awarded, you get through contracting and then do some planning. We now, as of this time, we have 2 projects underway. They're private developers. One is purchased a tract of land inside the city limits and is moving a house in from the country. That will be a rental. And he is also constructing 1 new house on that land as well, and he intends to sell that, and that will all be workforce housing. Another developer is coming in and putting up 2 new 5-plexes, which will be great. Each one has an attached garage. Those again are rentals. Not, they will fall within workforce housing, but and our community decided to loan those funds out at 3% interest to provide an incentive to get some private developers doing housing, which 3% is considerably below market today and for the foreseeable future. So we're excited to have those funds out circulating now, and those projects are underway. So by the end of 2025, we'll have more new housing units. So that's awesome. Go ahead. Another workforce housing project was completed in 2023, and this is before Wood River had its own workforce housing fund. So this private developer actually worked with SCED and was financed through SCED's workforce housing. And this is a good example of collaborations. On this particular corner lot sat a very dilapidated 2-story home that actually had damage from the 2019 floods that hit our community pretty hard. And the owner ended up walking away from it. So the city acquired the old house and paid to have that demolished. Then the city turned right around and put it out for bid and sold the lot to this particular private developer. It didn't end up costing the city anything net because they were able to sell the lot off. But then the developer got a discounted rate from SCED and built this new duplex unit. They each have 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and you can see there's a 1-car garage which is where they adjoin, which is nice because then you don't hear your neighbors. I thought that was a great idea. They are 0 entry, so that makes them accessible to everyone. This was definitely much needed workforce housing. And both of those units have been fully occupied since he finished them. And SCED did the ribbon cutting, which was in you know, it says it's 2024. I feel like it was longer ago than that, but maybe that's right. Time flies. So yeah, that's more workforce housing. Our housing journey over the past 10 years also included opening up a new subdivision in our community. And so this would be, if you're familiar with Wood River, this would be on the north side of town, between town and the high school. And so the new subdivision was opened up, and in order to get that deal done, it's basically a huge farm field. The city was able to get the landowner to let them just develop a chunk at a time, so that the city didn't put infrastructure into the whole thing and have all of its cash out there sitting there unused for a lot of years. So the city gets repaid when a lot sells. So a portion of that lot sale price goes to the landowner for the value of the land, and the rest goes to the city to recoup their investment in the infrastructure. So there's one cul-de-sac that is fully developed. There's actually one lot left on that cul-de-sac that somebody bought and then had a change of plans due to COVID. And then there are more lots. There's kind of like large lots, medium lots, and smaller lots, very intentionally to try and develop all types of housing in that new subdivision. Go ahead. Yeah, so on the cul-de-sac, what we're seeing is, custom homes, as you might expect. And those 3 homes are all done and occupied. They were not built as spec homes. They were all custom homes for certain buyers. Go ahead. Okay, and then some other workforce housing that we've done, although not under the auspices of the current Workforce Housing Fund, but in the upper left there, that lot had on it, it looked like an old church building, but it was actually called the Women's Club. Very run down. It was an eyesore. The city acquired that from the owner, tore it down, sold off the lot to a private developer. They built that single family residence, and it sold, of course, quickly for around $280,000. And so every time we convert a dilapidated property into something livable, not only do we expand our volume of housing, but we also increase our tax rolls. So that's good for everyone. And then in the lower right, there was one block of infill land available, and we worked with a private developer. He bought the whole block and developed two of these townhome structures. So there's actually four living units, very attractive. They're very nice. Some of them have fireplaces, granite countertops. Those are a little higher end, but they all sold. And if one comes on the market, it goes off again pretty quickly. So that's more great workforce housing. Go ahead. Another project that, as a community, we're proud of is our downtown revitalization grant, which we did the planning grant that was awarded in 2019. And then the work began in 2021 and was finally completed in 2022. One aspect of our DTR project was facade renovations, and we were able to fund renovations to 3 commercial buildings. This is the before and the after on one of those buildings. It was the former Masonic Temple. It's owned by a private business person. And you can see what a difference the facade renovation made to the aesthetics of that building. And in one of the early slides, when I showed you the side by side of the 2 buildings that are owned by that developer, the main floor facade on the left building was also part of the DTR. And so just a night and day difference. And they hope to be able to do the same thing on the main floor of the right building, the Dunn building as well. So yeah, so DTR, and then we also did landscaping, new street lights, bump outs, very nice downtown redevelopment. Go ahead. In 2018, we addressed a challenge. We did not have a pool in town. There had been one out in the country at the golf course since 1967, and it was all run down and just wasn't functioning well. So anyhow, community leaders raised a couple $1 million and then floated a bond issue to build this aquatic center, which has been very popular, as you might imagine. And we're seeing traffic, people come from about an hour around in the summer months to enjoy, this facility. It's clean, it's easy to get to, safe. It's got all the amenities. So that was a great development. Go ahead. Yeah. And in 2021, Wood River Vision actually opened Stick Creek Kids Child Care Center. And so Stick Creek Kids is just, it's an operating entity within Wood River Vision 2020 Inc. So it's a nonprofit child care center. And we've got some pictures here. That was from the grand opening, the mayor and the kids doing the ribbon cutting. Go ahead. And this building, if you haven't heard the story, in 2019, when the bomb cyclone hit, about half of our community flooded. This building had been the local Good Samaritan nursing home that had been there since the 60s. Good, solid building. Water did not get into the building, but all the residents had to be evacuated for safety. And then about a month after the flood, Good Samaritan let it be known that they weren't going to bring any residents back. So overnight, we lost 40 jobs and part of our continuum of care and keeping our older folks nearby. So that was a great disappointment to our community. But after that, we got in touch with Good Sam and said, gosh, you've got kind of a black eye here. And, how about you either donate the building or sell it to us at a deep discount? And keep in mind, this is a 25,000 square foot, one-story building, sprawling, as you'll see here in a little bit. And to their credit, they said, you know what, you're right. We should give that back to the community. So we bought the building for $100,000. And then we took half of that building and turned it into Stick Creek Kids. So these are some views inside classrooms. The upper right is used to be the dining room at the nursing home. Well, it made a heck of a great indoor play space, multi-purpose room. The commercial kitchen was there. They had removed all the appliances that weren't affixed, but importantly, the Ansel system was still there. And so we just had to have that serviced and upgraded and whatnot. But it's a great functioning commercial kitchen because we cook everything from scratch. Our chef does, or most things, I should say. And the chef, the Stick Creek Kids Kitchen actually makes meals for the senior center in Wood River and in nearby Caro now. So it's, we're getting better quality, fresher food to our seniors out of that same existing space. So kind of collaborating on that as well. Go ahead. The exterior of the building got fresh paint. The mansard roof area was the old shingles that were falling off was replaced with ABC seamless, like vertical, I guess, roofing, steel roofing. We have a farm to table garden out front. And so in the spring, we plant a variety of vegetables and fruits and some flowers. And then the kids and the teachers get to help tend things, and they have lessons about where their food comes from. We worked with Row Sanctuary out of Gibbon to create a bunch of natural play spaces. They did the plantings with native plants that would be sustainable, low water needs for our area. And all of in the right-hand picture where you see the painted line, that's a trike path. But all of that concrete was actually there because of the nursing home had it as like kind of a serenity garden or whatever for their residents. So the playground is huge. That's actually the preschool on up playground. We have a separate playground for infants and toddlers. So go ahead. And then this is pretty exciting. So when we bought that building in 2019, following the floods, I told you we took half of it for Stick Creek kids. And we started, we said, that's plan A. That's the most pressing need because we did not have childcare. And the few in-homes that we had, those gals had done a heck of a great job for a lot of years, but they were getting kind of tired and wanted to retire. So that was priority number one. And then we said, we'll take the rest of that building and develop it into something else. So once we got Stick Creek Kids done, a great big collaboration came together between the city and Vision, the library, the senior center. Our local ministerial association runs a food pantry and so on. So we formed a leadership team for what we are now calling it as Legacy Station. So that Legacy Station is the home to the new senior center, library, and food pantry that will be moving into the other half of the building in probably 2026. Go ahead. So here's an aerial. You can see where Stick Creek Kids is. And then in purple, you can see the lower portion will become a new senior center. The portion to the east will become a new public library. And then that little jut out on the end was just the perfect size to give a permanent home to our food pantry program. They have never had a place of their own. They kind of used a back hallway in the senior center. And I'm guessing a lot of communities will say, yep, that, you just cobble it together. That's what we had done for a lot of years. This will give them permanent space where they actually can have freezers and refrigerators and accept donations that need those kind of appliances. And what we love the idea of is the city's going to pave a one-way street along that far right side. And so that the food bank of the Heartland semi can pull right up to the food pantry, which will have a garage door opening and forklift the foods that they buy in quantity right into their space. It also is ideal because then when they do food box giveaways, which they do several times a year, the person who's picking up food can just drive right up there. It can go into the trunk and off they go. Historically, they've had to get that food, then move it like to a church parking lot or to the school. That stuff is heavy, and do the giveaways that way. So it's going to be pretty slick. And then the last component in that whole legacy station is going to be a storm shelter, which our community has never had a public storm shelter. And interestingly, right across the street to the west is all of our low-income housing and our senior housing. Those places don't have basements. They don't have safe rooms. They really are exposed. And so when the way this will work is there are central restrooms in what we call the hub of Legacy Station. And that'll be steel reinforced concrete lids on those restrooms. And so there will be a special lock on that door by the food pantry where you can see that little square. And when the weather alarms go off, it will automatically unlock and people will be able to go in there and go into the steel reinforced concrete bathrooms for a storm shelter. And that's available to everyone in the community. Okay. This is a diagram from JEO. This was a preliminary design of Legacy Station, but you can see what amenities there will be inside of the senior center. They will have a warming kitchen, but their meals will continue to come from Stick Creek Kids, which will just be down the hall. And the ladies are very excited to have a separate room with, walls dividers so that they can do like their Tai Chi and whatnot. They don't like people watching them, but there will be room for cards and socialization and you name it in there. And then to the right is the library, which will finally, we have a public library. It's just very small and it's not ADA accessible. It's built in the 60s, but there will be a dedicated space for teens and for youth, a maker space, private meeting rooms, a big meeting room. In the meeting rooms, there will be the technology so that like if a small business owner needed to do a Zoom call in a professional setting, but maybe they work from home, they'll be able to come in there, or somebody that's trying to pursue an online degree that doesn't have Wi-Fi at home or something. We find our library gets a lot of use because of the free Wi-Fi already. So yeah, so that's a view inside Legacy Station. Go ahead. Our timeline, this has been a couple of years of worth of fundraising, but we just in December got one final grant that got us to the finish line. We raised $2.7 million to pay for all of the renovations. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Taryn Horn, who I think I saw is attending today. She is with NDEE, and this building, because it was vacated and had asbestos in it based on when it was built, Taryn and NDEE made some funding available to help with asbestos abatement. I believe it was 50% of the abatement cost. And so we were able to take what would have been a brownfield and turn it into a place of new promise for our community. So, we're just getting to the point where the city's going to go out for bids on this with the whole project in phases. But last I heard from the mayor, he was thinking spring 2026 completion. He said, if not sooner. And we all know how that goes. So go ahead. So, this is the latest chapter in the story of Wood River's journey toward community development. And I think, the key takeaways are, if you find leaders with a can-do mindset, and develop a bunch of leaders so nobody gets burned out, you can get things done like you've seen here. And, we're thankful to be right in the middle of the Tri-Cities between Grand Island, Hastings, and Kearney. We have lots of people, young families that would like to move to Wood River. And it's an easy commute to any of those three cities where most people work. So that is our story.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Always a great story. I love it. So what questions or comments do you have for Sarah? I do have a question in the chat box. Shelby has a great question. In Albion, they have rural workforce money, but can't seem to get developers to participate or come to the table, and their organization can't foster or develop projects. So how do you champion developers? I love the question.
It is a great question, and we sort of struggled with that throughout 2024, honestly. And I think there's some of it is just luck and timing. One of the developers that we're working with is local, and one is from Grand Island Phillips area. And the one from outside the community that's doing the 2 5-plexes actually just ran out of land where he had been building. So he needed to go look for a new place with land. And, I think partly it's like getting the word out and networking. But the lower interest rate, are they being built because of that? No. They probably would have been built anyway, because that particular developer, had the capacity to develop it on his own. But the lower interest rate is certainly an enticement to get somebody to come to your community. So,
Okay. I know you've been hoping and anticipating housing development for, gosh, at least maybe 6 years, if not longer, and finally starting to see the fruits of labor and efforts. So, yeah, got a couple more questions. Somebody's asking me what you found successful as far as community fundraising.
oh, that's a loaded question. There is nothing easy about community fundraising. And backstory, ours is a lovely community, but it's not like a community with a whole bunch of old wealth, right? People sitting around with a lot of cash. We're a relatively small community, and then we have farmland. And, as a result of the farmland, we can never qualify as an LMI community income-wise, even though many residents, we just have the entire economic continuum within our community. And we would typically hover around 50% free and reduced lunch at our schools. So in terms of fundraising, Lori, when we went to do Stick Creek Kids for CDBG, we used the free and reduced lunch rate as a proxy to qualify for CDBG benefiting LMI families, because that's who's going to be using childcare. So that's a tip. I actually attended a fundraising school. Gosh, I think that was about 2018, on how to manage a capital campaign. I didn't know anything about any of this, and so I can assure you, if we can do it, you can do it. But there are some strategies, and it's important to take things in the right order. Make sure you can establish need, right? Do community surveys so that you can go to funders and say, we know there's a need for X because we talked, we sent this survey out to our entire community. We got this many responses. Of those respondents, they showed whatever. When you go to funders, you've got to have a vision, you've got to have a plan, you've got to have the right message. And I think the greatest challenge is fundraising within our own community. And I don't know if that's typical in other communities or not, but when, like when we were fundraising for Stick Creek Kids, you think about, okay, well, who has the money to give? Typically, it's maybe your older generation that has amassed their wealth. Well, in that generation, mom stayed home with the kids. So it's kind of contrary, like, well, why do you need childcare, right? So there's an educational process to whatever your project is that you're fundraising for. You've got to help explain why it's important and how they can leave a fingerprint on their community. And I'm sure you've seen the graphic. Somebody planted a tree a long time ago, and now we have shade, right? And so that's kind of what you're trying to motivate your donors to think about is, what would you like your legacy to be in your community?
I remember during the Stick Creek Kids campaign, you shared the number of over 10,000 hours of volunteer time had been contributed. I don't know what that number is today with all the different projects, but I'm sure it's countless. But yeah, sometimes it's just that boots on the ground, getting things out and education and all sorts of things. So yeah.
Yeah.
So we got a question about what type or what sort of work has and is being done to prevent flooding in the future.
Great question. So, the bomb cyclone was kind of a freak event. Wood River hadn't had any flooding since I think about 1967. It was just not anything anybody really saw coming. And just the circumstances of it really, the ground was frozen. We got a lot of rain. It couldn't go anywhere, right? And it broke the creek way out in the country and came cross country into town. But since that time, several things have been done. One is the city, worked with the state to acquire some land on one corner of town where the natural water flow wants to come into the community. And at first they built a temporary dam there, and then they worked with the state and put in a concrete dam now. And so that will prevent the water from coming into the community because it's supposed to run in the ditches along Highway 30, which runs from Kearney to Grand Island. So that was one important project, and it was tested in July of 2019. Kearney got all that rain, and here it was coming. We just no way, But so everybody was watching, and that worked. The other thing that the city has done, they got FEMA funding. I think it was FEMA funding to do a drainage project on the other side of town where water just got trapped and then backed up into the community. So they accomplished that. And then they've worked with an engineering firm to identify other flood risk mitigation projects. And I'm not really sure where funding is going to come from on that. I'm just not up to date on that. But, if they can find funding, then they'll continue to pursue those things. So, yeah, so everybody feels pretty good about, floods probably not going to be a problem again. Knock on wood, though, right?
Just a quick question for those who may be not familiar with Wood River. What is the population?
About 1340.
Okay, super. And this may be a Sharon and Sarah question, if possible. Gina's wanting to know about how SCED worked with the builders. I think it's probably the duplex. The duplex that Sarah mentioned that was built by a private developer was funded in part by our rural workforce housing loan
It was a
fund
loan.
program.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was just a construction loan. That was initially going to be townhomes. And, it's just really important to involve all the parties. Not that anybody made a mistake at all, but the previous house faced a different direction. And so the backyard was a side yard, could be smaller. And now that it was turned, they found out they couldn't split the lots when they got ready. The building inspector approved everything. They didn't know that the zoning person might have a different opinion. And so it was a struggle. It was a tough lesson for all of us. I wouldn't have known either. But good to talk to everybody when you're doing a project. So they ended up keeping that as rentals, and that's been successful. But we only do construction, 12-month construction funding with our rural workforce. So that's what they used.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any last questions for Sarah? I had written down to ask you what the ingredients of your secret sauce was, but I think one of your final slides talked about progressive leadership and dedication, and just a lot of hard work goes into this to make your community successful. So, yeah.
Countless volunteers. There you go.
Oh, yeah, that is so true. And you have a fair number of them that have been doing this for many years. So we greatly appreciate what they're doing. We've provided Sarah's email on your screen. If you want to reach out and ask her any questions, she's happy to work with you on getting you information or answering your questions so that perhaps you can begin a journey similar to what Wood River has undertaken the past few years. So be sure and grab her contact information there. So just a reminder that today's webinar, as well as previous webinars, can be found on our HomeNE.us website. You can search by Sarah's name or a topic or a title or something that, excuse me, that you heard in her presentation, and the webinar will pop up, as well as maybe others that have that same search feature in it. So feel free to check that out. We know that a lot of you do go back and watch old webinars. So, and also our next webinar is going to be February 20th. Just an aside note here, February is kind of a special month for our HomeNE Learning Network. It's our 7th anniversary of launching HomeNE. I went back into the archives and found one of our slides from that very first webinar. And so while our format has changed, our mission remains the same: to bring people together in a learning network format, to share success stories, lessons learned, and to just learn from one another and hopefully seek to apply what they learn in their own communities. So I hope you'll join us on February 20th. So Sarah, once again, I greatly appreciate the time and the effort that you've given us today. Appreciate you as a community as well. And thank you for what you've done in the city of Wood River. So any last thoughts or anything you want to share before we sign up?
No, I just put in the chat, good job, everybody, that, for what you're doing in your community. It's important work, and pat yourself on the back, because probably no one else will, and that's okay. Just know that you're doing a great thing.
Yeah, well, and thank you for what you do as well. So with that, we'll conclude, and I just wish everybody a great rest of your day. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.